Hey friends, let's get back to American Miscellany. We're here on essay number 145, Independence and Accumulation, which sounds really interesting. I'm excited to get into this. As you know, this book is called American Miscellany, published in 1865. It's a random collection of essays, and we've just finished essay number 144. It's all about John Winthrop, the first governor of Connecticut. It turned out to be kind of boring and sanctimonious, which you would expect from the title. But oftentimes, many of these essays are kind of boring and sanctimonious, despite their interesting titles. But, hopefully this is going to be a good one, right? I'm intrigued. Okay, so here we are, page 370 of American Miscellany, essay number 145. Let's get into it. Independence and Accumulation. There is a remarkable harmony between the moral and physical laws of the universe. The laws of the unwritten revelation of nature may be said to give their sanction to the laws of the written revelation of the Bible. They never clash, they always run parallel, indicating a common source and pointing to a common issue. We might find a familiar illustration of this great truth in the moral precept of temperance. We shall find the laws of health and organization cooperating with the laws of our spiritual being, to bless the man who obeys this moral law, to punish him who disobeys it. We shall find the temperate man, other things being equal, in the enjoyment of vigorous health. We shall find the intemperate man old in middle life, victim of low spirits, headache, gout, dyspepsia, and delirium tremens. 100% true already. Okay. We might find an illustration equally striking in the moral precept of chastity. Terrible are the sanctions with which the physical laws of health and organization have hedged round this divine statute. The violation of it is indeed followed by rottenness in the bones. Our purpose in this article is to endeavor to show that this harmony between moral and physical law prevails most strikingly as regards the vice against which the 10th commandment is directed. Many and solemn are the denunciations of the spirit of covetousness. We are told that the love of money is the root of all evil, and that we cannot serve God and mammon, that a rich man cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven. We are taught that a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth, and commanded to take no thought for the morrow. How does external nature respond to these doctrines and precepts? Most emphatically and unequivocally. It sanctions the precept, take no thought for the morrow, by declaring that by taking ever so much thought, we cannot be rich. While we sigh for independence and pursue it with our whole heart, nature declares that we cannot be independent. While we accumulate, adding house to house and field to field, nature declares that there shall be no accumulation of real riches in all her wide domain. Palpable facts seem to contradict these assertions. Men do become rich, accumulate property, and attain to that sort of independence which enables them to dispense with the necessity of earning bread by the sweat of their brow. These are but exceptions to the great general rule. The millions of the human family are poor. They have always been poor, they shall always be poor. All the riches in the world were no more to their poverty than a drop of rain to the sand of the desert. All the accumulated property in the world would not sustain all the men in the world in independent idleness for 1 month. And although we did do a lot of that independent idleness, didn't we, during COVID, for a lot longer than 1 month. And it is written in the law of the seasons that it shall never be otherwise. The principal riches in the world, and that without which all other riches were worthless, is grain, which is emphatically termed the staff of life. But the primeval curse is upon the earth, and it does not bring forth double harvests. We are told that seed time and harvest shall never cease, and in this it would appear to be intimated that the annual harvest of the world shall suffice only for a world's annual rations. At all events, thus it is. Nature declares that there shall be no accumulation of grain, but that yearly, as the seasons revolve, we must sow our fields and reap our harvests. It is not at all probable that there was ever a year and a half's supply for the first necessary of life at one time in the world. 2,000 years ago, a Roman poet thus wrote, the sire of gods and men with hand decrees forbids our plenty to be bought with ease, and wills that mortal men, inured to toil, shall exercise with pains the grudging soil. It is still the same in these days, though the science of agriculture is probably better understood and more successfully reduced to a practice now than at any former period. Clothes, which come second in our list of necessaries, are subject to the law which regulates and limits the supply of food. An erroneous opinion prevails that by means of our mechanical power and machinery we can produce clothing stuffs in unlimited quantity and with as much facility as banknotes. It were as correct to suppose that millers can produce an unlimited quantity of flour, or that bakers can produce loaves in unlimited numbers, whereas it is clear that the loaves must be limited by the quantity of flour, and the flour by the quantity of wheat in the world. It is the same with the raw material of our clothing. The sheep's wool, the cotton wool, the flax, the raw silk, which are the materials of our principal textile manufactures, are as difficult to produce as grain. They are equally subject to the law of the seasons, and there is as great difficulty in the way of their rapid increase. Indeed, there are peculiar difficulties in the way of an increase for our clothing materials. Grain can be grown in many countries where cotton and silk cannot, and it will be seen at a glance that there are peculiar difficulties in the way of a rapid increase of the quantity of sheep's wool. So as regards food and clothing, the indispensable necessaries of life, a nation can never be said to be rich or independent. It can never say with the fool in the parable, "Thou hast much goods laid up for many years." But yet there are truth and meaning in such expressions as the wealth of nations, the increase of national wealth. In a most important sense, nations may be rich, either as compared with each other or with themselves at different periods of their history. The elementary idea of the wealth of a nation is exceedingly simple. It consists in the facilities it possesses for performing that work which must be performed every year. More particularly, it consists in the number and completeness of its tools and in its skill to use them. Moral law commands, "Lay not up treasures on earth," and the physical law of the seasons effectually prohibits nations from breaking it as regards their indispensable riches, but neither moral nor physical law interposes to prevent nations or individuals from performing their work with as much facility and quickness as they please. Accordingly, men have sought out many inventions in which we find the secret of their riches. The fertile lands of a country, its agricultural implements, its roads and canals, its quays and harbors, its ships, its factories and machinery, these and the skill to use them are the elements of a nation's wealth. They are tools and instruments for the production and distribution of its annual supply of food and raiment, and according to their number and perfection and the skill to handle them is a nation rich or poor. But all these things are rather the potential means of wealth than wealth itself. A nation may be possessed of all these means and appliances of wealth, and yet be poor as regards that indispensable wealth of nations, food and clothing. If it were possible to multiply all these things 100-fold, still the nation that possessed them might be only a little way nearer to independence than the most untutored tribes of savages. But still there is a noble liberality in the hand of nature. Although the terms on which nations hold their lease of life are unremitting toil and labor from year to year, yet provision is made for the support of two large classes who, from different causes, are incapable of toil. We allude to the young and the old, to the wards and the pensioners of society. Nature makes ample provision for these two classes, while she sternly demands that her strong young men shall follow her as she walks majestically through the seasons, and live by submitting to the primeval destiny. She pours from her lap an abundant supply, not only for her immediate followers, but for their old men and their little ones. Here we have the first glimpse of a retiring pension fund in the economy of nature. We shall now briefly trace the process by which men write their names upon the list of pensioners and become independent, long before nature gives them their discharge from the ranks of labor. The social compact is a fable, but it is founded upon enough of reality to warrant us to reason upon its prescriptive laws. One of the most universally acknowledged of them has reference to the institution of property. Men generally submit to labor as to a necessary evil, and long to escape from it to the imaginary Elysium of independence. Such an escape is possible only by mutual accommodation. In a simple state of society, men could not be rich. They would soon reach the limits of that accumulation which the physical laws of the world permit. They might produce in 1 year as much grain and weave as much cloth as would feed and clothe them, say, for 7 years. But their independence of labor would still extend over only 6 years, and before the end of that time the rats and the moths and the wearing elements would have made inroads upon their stores. But the independence which man cannot win single-handed from nature, he secures by a compact with his brethren. The general process is as follows. He labors hard and produces more than is required by his immediate wants. He gives the surplus to society and receives in return a bond for the amount upon its productive powers. All that he produces, whether of corn, cloth, or other less necessary commodities of daily use, as well as the aggregate produce of the entire community, is consumed during the year, but at the end of it the hard-working man holds a mortgage upon part of the next year's produce, even before it exists. He repeats the process. He goes on working hard, or working skillfully, or persuading others to work for him, disposing of his surplus produce, and increasing the number or amount of his bonds upon society, by which we simply mean money. At length he is satisfied that his acknowledged claims upon society are sufficient to keep him independent of labor all his life, and then he retires upon a competence. and independence thus won does no violence to that natural law which forbids the independence of an entire community. It is won by an honest and honorable process, and the subject of it can comfort himself with the reflection that he is only receiving back from society that with which he has entrusted it, or for which he had given it value. While he was bearing the heat and burden of the day, others who had borne it before him, as well as the little ones who were to bear it after him, were living upon the fruit of his immediate labor. All parties were accommodated. They held their being upon the terms, each help the others. One would fain hope that the time would come when this much coveted prize of independence will be held out by society as within the reach of all its members, when the honest, industrious man, instead of being haunted all his life by the fear of poverty in his old age, shall have the consolation of knowing that after a certain period of labor he shall receive his discharge and be admitted in virtue of his services into the great hospital of society. This were a consummation devoutly to be wished. But after all, how precarious is the independence of the most independent. As we approach the weeks of harvest, we are within a month or two of absolute starvation. Were the winds commissioned to thrash our fields, or the mildew to blight them, or the caterpillar to devour them, the rich and the poor, the nobleman and the beggar, should alike be swept into a common ruin. All the other riches of the world, failing the riches of our golden harvest fields, were as worthless as the flash notes of the forger. But as regards this indispensable treasure, we have seen that neither individuals nor nations have been or ever can be rich. Our daily bread is measured out to us, and our daily bread only. By taking thought, we could as easily add a cubit to our stature, or wash the Ethiopian white. As we could make the nations independent of labor for a single year. And yet, this independence is one of our heroic words. Sorry. I'm reading this for the first time with you guys, and I didn't expect that little bit of racism. I should by now, after 145 essays. They like to sprinkle it in, it's. I guess it was 1865. That's all we can say. My apologies for that. Okay, that was heinous. Okay, here we are. Okay. And yet, this independence is one of our heroic words. We sing songs in its praise. An important section of our social institutions, insurance societies, and in all their varieties, is founded upon our desire of it, and may be regarded as so many breakwaters thrown up against the dreaded waves of uncertainty, in the midst of which we are destined to lead our lives. After long years of incessant toil, after the limbs have been stiffened with labor, or the brain wasted with thought, or the heart shriveled with feverish longing, 1 in 1,000 attains to an independence which is built upon the world's riches. Society is pledged to find him in food and raiment, though thousands should be in want of both. But society can discharge its obligation to him only if the seasons are favorable, or if it does so in unfavorable seasons, it is at the expense of hunger and nakedness to many of its members. For, we repeat it, the world as a whole is poor. There is no accumulation of real wealth in its richest nation. Poverty is the constant companion of the millions of the human family. Starvation is often within a day's march of countless multitudes of them. Once a year is within a month of them all. But God tempers the wind to the shorn lamb, and Providence, which gives to this large family its daily bread, while it presents a sublime fact upon which faith, which is better than independence, can rest in peace, administers a severe reproof to that faithless faint-heartedness which is too often the principal motive to the pursuit of the phantom independence.